Welcome back. One card at a time, Winning Hand, the podcast. We are here, episode 41. My name is Boom Guy, and I am joined today, as always, by Leethus.
Hey, what's up?
And our special guest, Amerikano.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Amerikano, your voice sounds very familiar. Have I heard you somewhere before?
I mean, besides playing together at Con of Heroes, yeah. It's very possible that you've heard me on the MCM podcast. I was a host there for several years. That ended about a year ago.
Yeah, you were the original big podcasters on the Marvel Champions scene. You are a professional, and hopefully people are gonna, if they don't know you yet, they should learn who you are after this.
I'm so important.
Go listen to 100 episodes of MCM.
All right, well, let's just jump right into that then. Let's start with introducing you, and then I have a few questions I'm going to ask you that we ask all of our guests when they come on, so our listeners can get to know you a little bit. So why don't you just tell us first a little bit about yourself and how you got into the game?
I started playing the game shortly after the release. I wasn't one of the early adopters like from Gen Con, but when we had the Captain America and Miss Marvel packs, that's when I bought into the game. And shortly after that is when I joined the MCM podcast. And mostly I did it because I wanted to justify buying everything. So, yep. I mean,
goals.
That was my initial like justification for it. But I found myself thinking about the game all the time and wanting to talk about it. Because I had never really gotten into any of the LCGs that Fantasy Flight had put out. My background, I did play a little bit of Magic: The Gathering, but I was never like, I did do deck building, and you have to with Magic, but I wasn't like having conversations with people online about card combinations and things like that. But with Marvel Champions, I found it was easier to have that like mentality or mindset because it was cooperative, and I enjoyed the theme. So it's just I was constantly thinking about it, and so that's why I was able to join MCM, and we got to talk about it a lot.
Yeah, did the theme bring you in? Are you a Marvel guy before that?
I watched the Marvel movies. I had read some comics. But I'm not an avid comic reader as far as Marvel goes.
I mean, at this point, keeping up with the MCU is basically a hobby unto itself.
Sure.
There's so much stuff there now.
Yeah. And I don't keep up with the MCU anymore. After whatever they call in Phase 3, I'm like, all right, this is over for me. There's just too much.
Yeah, I think I checked out like when they ended it with Thanos, Endgame, and Infinity War. I think I was kind of like, I mean, I've picked at it, but like it's not really for me anymore.
I've still watched almost everything.
Yeah, you might want to see someone about that. You have a problem. So you said you got in with the Miss Marvel and Captain America packs. That's also when I got in, right after the core set. Do you have a favorite hero in the game?
I do have a favorite hero, and I will give you a definite favorite hero, unlike some previous guests that you've had.
Thank you.
If I had to choose one right now, it's going to be Nova. I've enjoyed playing Nova since he came out, 2 years ago now, I think, something like that.
Yeah, at the con, I think.
I think for me with Nova, the timing, like that's a fun puzzle, but also what they did with Wild, I didn't see that before. I know that there's been several heroes since then that have like focused more on the Wild resource. I think at that point, that was the first one. We had Venom as well, but he just generated a Wild. I don't think he had any cards that interacted, like gave him a discount for Wilds or anything. So I liked that aspect about Nova.
What's your favorite aspect?
It's protection.
Protection, all right.
Leethus is going to love my answer. My second favorite aspect is aggression.
Here we diverge.
Boot him now.
But I mean, if I get to choose, I'm going to usually choose protection. I think there's a lot now with the game state with where it is that it's not like it was when that first came out. I felt like protection was fairly weak.
Yeah, it was.
Your kind of archetype or deck building options were pretty limited.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of the idea with a deck within like a living card game anyway. Is you at least with this one, you didn't have to buy multiple core sets, right?
Yeah.
But I think protection was served the least in the early game, and I think that they've done a really good job. The developers have done a good job at expanding the card pool for protection that allow different types of players to jump into that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite villain, Amerikano?
My favorite villain used to be Hela. Because of the different like checkpoint stages. I talked a lot about this on the MCM podcast. I thought that was really cool. I think Magneto kind of took that to the next level and did it a little bit better than Hela. If I'm going to choose one right now, honestly, I think, well, yeah, let's say Magneto because of that idea.
What level are you playing at? Are you a standard?
I play
expert?
standard almost exclusively.
Okay, you're not going for heroic.
I have played heroic many times. I don't enjoy heroic. When one of the developers issued a challenge to beat heroic 3 Claw years ago, Kennedy Hawk and myself took it upon ourselves to try that, and we had Captain Marvel and Captain America, who were the two strongest heroes at the time, in my opinion, at least. And we couldn't do it. I mean, it was just with the cards we had, and I honestly have zero desire to go attempt that ever again. I can be talked into expert pretty easily, but if I'm setting up the game, I'm just getting standard.
It depends, I guess. Good the experience I'm looking for. I generally play expert, but sometimes I just don't want an expert game and just want something like a little breezier.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that there's standard and expert 2 and standard 3 now, and you can kind of modulate it however you want to, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of levers that you can pull and move around to make it as difficult, really, or I mean, there's a baseline easiness to each villain, but I mean, you could always dilute it, I guess, and throw in easy modular sets and stuff. But
to a degree, right? Same thing with difficulty. You can ratchet it up to a degree. What is your primary and or favorite player count for the game?
My favorite player count is 3.
Okay.
I think that's a good balance of interaction between heroes and seeing how some of those deck building combos can play off of each other, especially if you have more interactive heroes. For example, Storm, right? Mm-hmm. Really good at affecting the entire board. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on how you build a hero, but Storm is just the first one that comes to mind, right?
Yeah.
I like that because then you can get a couple people to play with you and not just one other person. But I think primarily I play 2-player. My primary gaming companion is my wife, and I don't prefer to play this game two-handed solo. Well, I don't like to pilot 2 heroes at a time. I feel like at that point, for me personally, there's too much upkeep dealing with the hero and the villain side that I'd rather go play a video game and have the game do it for me.
Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah.
So
I think two-handed solo for me has become like a hard pass. I like the game, and I've said this many times before, but I like the game better at 2 players. I think it just works better. But I enjoy the process of playing 2 heroes and upkeeping the villain so much less that I'm just like, I just feel like the whole game is upkeep, right? I'm just like, all right, this set of cards, and I put those down. And I do this set of cards. Wait, okay, do I want to go back and do something out of turn? Okay, no. I go, all right, now I'm done. I draw up, and I just do all the upkeep for this. I just feel like the whole game is upkeep at that point. I think 3 is awesome. 3 might be my favorite. I like to have people who know what they're doing, though.
Sure.
New players, I would probably go just to 2 and rather do a one-on-one with a new player. But
yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair.
All right, so last question for you. You mentioned you used to be on the Marvel Champions Monthly podcast, as it was formerly called before it was rebranded. What have you been up to since leaving MCM, and or what made you leave MCM, and are you still playing the game?
I have still played the game, not as much, because I haven't needed to keep up with it in order to produce valuable or I don't want to say valuable, but good content for our listeners. there was always an obligation there, which isn't a problem. But I did feel the obligation to, if people were going to spend the time to listen to my thoughts on it. And I say I mean the entire, not that I had anything necessarily groundbreaking or important to say. I mean, this is a card game after all, but if people were going to take their time to listen, I wanted to be prepared and at least have an idea of what I was talking about. And so after that happened, I did stop playing for a little while. Part of it was life was just so busy. I was at a stage in my career that I just couldn't keep up with it. All the extracurricular stuff. And there was a span of heroes that didn't appeal to me all the way, right? So I kind of just fell away for a little bit, but I've been back into the game. I'm still one of the host event coordinators for the fan convention.
Yeah.
I still enjoy that aspect of it. There's a unique social aspect to the game, which is kind of weird. But that's been enjoyable. That's been enjoyable for me. Before I got into Marvel Champions, I was a very, very big board gamer. I mean, I still am. I play a lot of board games. Some might say, my wife, that I have too many board games. I don't think it's possible.
Not possible. This is a safe space here, Amerikano.
But so I still get to play a lot of board games, and many of my friends that I play with don't play Marvel Champions. They play board games. So my free time that I was spending on gaming was less about Marvel Champions and more about other board games. But that's
you brought a copy of Arc Nova to the Con of Heroes. I saw you.
I bought a copy of Arc Nova at the convention. I didn't bring it. I bought it there so I could play it because I didn't own the game. Yeah, I did. Absolutely, I brought it home. I made sure it fit in my suitcase. If it didn't fit in my suitcase, I would have given it to somebody as a.
Some of those clothes are staying there. The game's going in the suitcase.
That's
fine. I can buy new shirts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have like other favorite games that you play?
Yeah, my favorite game is Scythe.
Oh, okay.
And then I also do like a lot of head-to-head games. Unmatched is another favorite of mine, the gaming system.
Well, speaking of playing games, let me just corral us all back towards the game that we're here to talk about. I want to respect the time of the 7 people that listen to this podcast so they can get back to what they really want to do. Let's talk about what we've been playing recently in terms of this game. And Leethus, I'm going to let you go first on this one. Why don't you tell us what you've been playing recently?
Sure. Yeah, I've dug Colossus back out and been playing him. He's always been a really interesting hero. Like, I think for the 4-hand size hero, he plays very unique. His relationship to flipping up and down is very different from a lot of the other characters. Playing him in protection feels wildly different from every other hero just because his relationship with damage is very, very skewed. Yeah, so dug him out, been playing him. It's a lot of fun.
What aspect?
Mostly protection lately. I've had a bunch of stints where I play him in Justice, and that is interesting, but I really wanted to figure out how he works in protection. And I mean, obviously, just get him more tough cards, but what does deck balance look like? What other cards are you running besides a couple copies of Perseverance?
Taunt. Taunt is a great card for Colossus, actually. Come on. You disagree?
I've re-examined Taunt a couple times, and I seed there might be a case for playing it.
There we go. You heard it. He said it's good.
But it's very narrow, and it's not Colossus.
Why not Colossus? But the card draw. You draw cards, you lose a tough card, you draw another card from Iron Will.
For other things. I mean, maybe you could get away with it if you get like Bulletproof Protector a bunch, but there's only 2 copies in there.
But Iron Will?
I don't know. I've never found Colossus to be so flush with tough cards that you're willing to just throw them away. Like, I think somebody like Parker makes more sense.
All right.
Parker.
All right. I think Taunt is great.
I mean, we'll do an episode on Taunt one day.
Oh, we will. We will.
But not this day.
No, today is not this day. Okay, well, I guess I'll go next because I think it leads into the hero I've been playing, who's analogous to Colossus in some ways. I've been playing a lot of Groot.
Ooh.
And, his relationship with damage is also a bit different.
Yeah.
Like Colossus. I have been playing a lot of Groot in leadership, using clarity of purpose to essentially turn him into Spider-Ham and spending those growth counters that he has as resources. Because you can use clarity of purpose to do yourself a damage, and then you just take the growth counter instead, and you create a resource. So
Yeah.
it's like a poor man's Spider-Ham.
Have you been able to build him up? Because I haven't been able to. Granted, I haven't played a lot of Groot since Galaxy's Most Wanted.
That's been a while.
Yeah. But have you found it viable to build him up? Because looking at him, I look at the idea of Groot and say, man, he can get really, really big. And that's really thematic for Groot, right? But I never was able to make that work. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but I'm just saying I wasn't. It didn't jive with me, with how I wanted to play him, and maybe I'm just a poor deck builder. I don't know. But just I wasn't able to get him to where I wanted him to be to just pound on the villain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, he's got those big cards. I am Groot and I am Groot, right? The one that thwarts equal to the counters on him, and the one that deals damage equal to the counters on him. And I think the temptation with a lot of players is to collect counters as much as possible and then flip up and play those cards. So you either build them in Justice to stay down, using all the Justice cards that let you stay in Alter Ego to build those counters until you're ready to attack. I went the opposite route, and I said, forget those cards. And if they come out and I happen to have a bunch of counters, great. But instead of that, I'm going to spend my counters using clarity of purpose.
Gotcha.
I'm going to spend my counters with all the other upgrades that he has to ready himself, that boost his thwarting, that readies him after a basic power, boost his attack, whatever. As soon as I stopped worrying about being precious with the counters and trying to save them for those big cards, Groot clicked for me, and he's a lot more fun. And I played Welcome Aboard to get out some allies, and I feel like you're doing stuff, and his team-up card is really good, and you can get Rocket out there, and I was using MedLab to just keep Rocket out, essentially. I would just use Rocket, and then he dies from consequential damage. I put him under MedLab, and then I'd flip down, get some counters, put Rocket back out, use his team-up card. So I got into a really good system, and I was really doing really well with Groot, and played a bunch of tougher games, and took him up against Venom Goblin a couple times on Expert to try to really push to see how far that deck would go. And it was really good, and I had a ton of fun. I actually really like Groot a lot, and I've always liked him and had a soft spot for him, and I just had always wished he was better.
I feel that.
And I think I finally kind of cracked it, and I've been having a ton of fun with him. So you should reassess and give Groot another chance.
I'm happy to do that. I always like revisiting some of the some of the previous heroes with some new deck building cards. Aspect cards. I think that's fun. That can breathe new life into the game. It also, it's a living card game. You don't have to only use the newest stuff with the newest heroes, right?
Yeah. No, the great thing, you just have Groot and you flip down, right? You get some counters and you flip back up, and then you use a counter to, boost his thwart with, Lashing Vines or whatever, and then you can use a counter to ready him, and you can spend a counter to attack, clarity of purpose to generate a resource. Like, the counters just go quickly, and then you, like War Machine, I was just flipping a lot to kind of get him back up. And give him a chance, listeners. If you haven't tried them in a while and you want something different, check them out. Amerikano, what have you been playing recently?
Yeah, I have some friends that, one friend in particular that's a really big fan of X-Men. So we've been playing a lot of X-Men themed stuff. I've been piloting Magic.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been using some of the Con of Heroes custom content, like the Mr. Sinister. What do we call it? Sinister Motive?
Shapeshifter.
Or Shapeshifter. That's right.
Yep.
Shapeshifter, where you get to put stickers on the cards and stuff, and that's been really fun. In that, I've been playing Magic mostly because she's the new her kid is the new shiny thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'll put a link to the custom content you just mentioned. I'll put a link to the Con of Heroes site in the description. So if you haven't heard of that before, we did a whole episode on the con. So if you want to listen to the more detail about those cards, go back and listen. 35 or 34, I don't remember what episode it was anymore, but it's in the catalog, and I'll put a link to the stuff again that you're talking about. Those cards are really cool, and they're really fun. And speaking of the Con of Heroes, let me just segue and ask you, is there plans to continue that? Are you going to be involved with that going forward? Is there plans for another one already?
The plans are in the works. We don't have a date yet. I am involved with Con of Heroes 2025. Nothing is set yet. I'll just put it that way.
But there will be Con of Heroes 2025.
The plan is to have another Con of Heroes 2025. Yes.
All right, that's what I'm talking about.
Got to make it next year.
Yeah, Leethus, you didn't make it this year. You got to go next year.
I haven't made it yet. I'm such a bad fan.
You are.
I'm ashamed of myself.
You know, the 7 listeners here are also shaming you. Email me, listeners. How much shame should he feel? winninghandpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know how bad Leethus should feel about himself.
On a scale of 3 to 8.
Yeah, how bad? All right, Amerikano, you're going to be there next year, right? There is one. You'll be there.
That's the plan. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, and we'll get another game in.
Yeah, we will.
We've played every year so far.
That's right.
The first year we played, you had Drax. He was your favorite back then.
Yes.
And we played Drax. I don't remember what did we play this year? I don't know what you had. No, you didn't bring any decks this year.
This year I didn't bring any decks.
Else's decks. That's right.
Yeah. I threatened to do that last year. I chickened out and brought decks. This year, I just said, you know what? I'm not going to bring any decks. I'm going to bum decks off of everyone else that I play with. Because why not? Everyone has decks.
Yeah.
Everyone had 5 decks that they brought at least. You know.
You got to save space in your luggage for Arc Nova. So
exactly.
No room for decks.
Did you get a good mix of heroes that way?
I did get a good mix of heroes. Yeah. I don't think I replayed the same hero twice.
Nice.
I think the second year you played, I remember you played my Star-Lord Web Warriors deck. I think the second year we were there.
You have a lot of janky decks. Yeah, you have a lot of janky decks.
Star-Lord Web Warriors. Like, what
and
the
I think
hell?
when we played together, did you have Hulk Pool? Is that what you played? Is that right?
This year? I didn't have
that's
Hulk
not right.
Pool. I played Star-Lord Pool this year.
Star-Lord Pool, that's right.
I played a lot of that this year. That was my favorite deck of the con. It was so much fun, man. Anyway, enough reminiscing about the con. I look forward to the next one. We will transition now to a listener email. We don't have a question this time, but somebody wrote in to say nice things, and everybody who listens to the show knows I'm a sucker for compliments. So winninghandpodcast@gmail.com. Send me more.
Don't you guys want to hear Boom Guy's radio voice? Like, it is meant for this type of, like, don't you want him to just read with this sultry voice? Like, put into text what you want him to read, and he will read it. Yeah, and it will sound amazing.
Thank you, Amerikano. You're making a strong case to come back on the podcast. I'm already convinced, actually. So, okay, I'll read this email here. The email comes from, he signs it as Ace. So, the last 2 podcasts have been absolute fire.
Yeah.
I don't know when, he wrote this, which 2 he's referring to, but they're all fire. Anyway, he goes on to say, I appreciate how you break down the card and discuss how it works and different uses. Playing this game can get repetitive based off of what works. Hearing different cards and the uses for them is just fantastic. Looking forward to your Vision breakdown. Oh, this must have been just before Vision. Your guests have been wonderful, and bringing on the Solo Champions League was tremendous as I listened to them as well. Thank you for sharing this great game, Ace. Well, thanks for writing in, Ace. I joke, like, he's just saying nice things here, but I think what drew me to this email and why I picked it is that he talks about playing the game can get repetitive based on doing what works, and we mentioned a minute ago how I build a bunch of jank decks at the con. I get a lot out of building nonsense decks that sound weird. That's why I play a lot of Groot. That's why I play a lot of Vision. That's why I play a lot of War Machine and other heroes that I think are underappreciated. But yeah, what do you guys think about, kind of getting these cards out here that maybe people haven't thought about before, or letting them think about them in new ways? That's kind of what we do here, yeah? Leethus?
I'm thinking.
Say something nice.
That's the premise of the podcast, right?
Or have a crazy hot take like you always do.
He does have a lot of hot takes.
Yeah, I was listening to one of our episodes. There's a lot of, like, hot take Leethus. I'm like, I don't think that's...
You get real spicy.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good, like, part of part of what makes talking to people about this game exciting is that people have different ideas about how to best utilize a card. Boom Guy and I talk about this all the time, how there's some card, like we were just talking about Taunt, where he loves Taunt, and it makes me slam my face in the desk. I don't understand. But it has led to some conversation that makes me rethink my approach to the game in ways that are actually interesting. And that gets me to go and play something that I might not otherwise play, which might make me learn something new about what a hero is capable of. And I think if you're getting bored, if you feel like things are getting repetitive, like you're just doing the same thing over and over again, try a new hero. Like, try someone you're less familiar with. If you find that you're playing a lot of games where you're just, it feels like you're slowly building up and then wiping out the villain in like 2 or 3 turns, try playing somebody who's more aggressive. If you feel like you're just running at the villain's face all the time, try playing one of the heroes that only has like 9 hit points and wants to flip down, and it'll force you into some different play patterns where you'll learn something new and start to appreciate some of those cards you've just been glossing over.
Or pick a weird card and start from there, you know?
Yeah.
Just say, I've had a recent obsession with the Auto Octavius Gray ally, and I've been building, the genesis of this idea was a Hawkeye deck that I built about a year ago, and I started trying to ready Hawkeye's bow as many times as possible.
That's clever.
And then this turned into an Iron Man deck that I built and published actually a few weeks ago, where I was trying to ready his tech as many times as possible and jumping through the hoops to get auto in and out of play. Was it a good deck? I don't know, but I had a ton of fun with it. You know, it did hold up under some testing, but yeah, just like build something weird, build something crazy. Like, one of the things I appreciate about an LCG, and kind of Amerikano touched on this earlier, is that it's cooperative. And so as a cooperative game, there isn't the idea of the settled meta in the way that there is in a TCG or a competitive game, where we all kind of settle on a meta, and yeah, you can build weird jank decks, but you're probably just going to lose because the meta is the meta for a reason. In this game, there may be something akin to a meta, but if you do some nonsense Groot deck, that's okay. Like, you're all in it together, and maybe you lose, but it doesn't have the same kind of sting when you lose, because you're not losing to somebody else. What do you think, Amerikano?
Yeah, I have a friend that hates to lose.
Aw.
And it's all right. Oh, I mean, I play mostly standard, right? So I like to win. I like to, when I play this superhero game, I want to feel like a superhero. I don't want the villain to feel like a pushover necessarily, but for me, in superhero stories, there are ups and downs, right? There's always, oh, is the superhero going to make it? But you always, I mean, we've heard, like with MCU, we've heard there's plot armor, there's superhero armor, right? Not actual armor that Iron Man's wearing, but the armor that we know that they're going to come up victorious. There might be one superhero that doesn't make it, but the team as a whole, the group is usually going to win, right? And I feel like for me that translates very well into this game. I feel like it shouldn't be so hard that you're just like, why are we playing this? What's the point? That's my worldview of Marvel Champions. I want to be able to win. I want there to be a struggle, of course, but I want to feel like a hero. And so, that being said, if you're playing with multiple people and you choose, like you said, Boom Guy, a random card, you're like, I'm going to figure out how to work this into the deck. Maybe the deck isn't great, but you have a couple superhero friends that can lift you. And I think that is what makes this game. It appeals to me, at least. And that's one of the appeals to me.
Yeah, I think this game really isn't that hard. If you want to win all the time, I think it's not that hard to win all the time, right? There are some very strong heroes. There are some very strong combinations. There are some like middling to easy villains, and you can probably push your win rate pretty high if you really want to win all the time. I don't really like to win all that much. I guess I like to win trying to, but to me...
The podcast is called Winning Hand.
That's true. That's a different story, an anecdote I'll tell later. But for me, I get more joy out of just like doing weird stuff and seeing if I can make it work in some way. And making it work might mean, Venom Goblin gets through his deck one time before I lose. Or, I don't know, like I didn't completely shoot myself in the face. I don't know, like I just doing weird stuff, and sometimes it comes off and it feels awesome because I feel like clever and I've tried something different that I've not seen before. I mentioned my Iron Man Auto Octavius deck. And at the time I published that deck, there was one other deck on Marvel CDB that had ever used Auto Octavius with Iron Man. It was in a different aspect. And I thought, like, okay, well, cool. Then I want to try this because I've done it, rather than build, I don't know, like another Miles Morales Leadership Wed Warriors deck, which is just like, I don't know, or Iron Man Repurpose. Not to put anyone down, but like I've seen that deck so many times that, like, I don't know, what can I do with it that's different,
Sure.
Yeah. It's always exciting when you see some card hit the table that does something that you didn't expect to see. Like, I think I mentioned this before, but like even the odds, like it's not a great card.
No.
But there are scenarios in which you can pull it off and it actually is good. And if like you play that card at the right moment at like a multiplayer table, like that's an awesome moment. That's great.
Yeah. And I love when people play cards and I think like, oh, I never thought to use that card in that way.
Yeah.
That's really clever. Like, I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Ace, thank you for listening and thank you for emailing. If anybody else wants to email, you got a question, you want to say something, winninghandpodcast@gmail.com. I'm always around to read your emails. So let's transition to the card of the day. We are here to talk about what doesn't kill me. Amerikano, you are the guest today. Why don't you read the card for us and then we'll talk about it.
So what doesn't kill me is a 2-cost protection event. It has a physical resource in the corner, and it has a requirement on it of a physical resource. And because this was in Sinister Motives when this first came out, with a few of them, it explains it on the card. While paying for this card, spend the listed resources. It has a hero action on it, which is heal 2 damage from your hero, arrow, ready your hero. And it has some Spider-Man art on it.
It does have some Spider-Man art. What can you describe the art for us? Like, what is the Spider-Man art?
Yeah, so it's a little bit
great.
It's a little bit poor cropping in that you can't fully see what Spider-Man is holding above his head. I think I've actually read this comic, but it's Spider-Man holding. I don't remember what it is. It's either like a water tank or like a building or something, because there's water coming down on him, and he's holding these beams up, just allowing, I'm assuming, because we don't see anybody, but civilians to escape.
It's a scene that immediately makes sense to you if you saw Spider-Man Homecoming.
There you go.
Why is that?
You clearly have not seen Spider-Man Homecoming.
So explain it to me.
In Spider-Man Homecoming, there's a scene where he gets crushed by a bunch of rubble and he's pinned underneath all of it. And he's trying to push himself up and out and raise the rubble off of him so he can escape. And this is basically that moment, except more heroic looking, and he still has his mask on.
Wait, is Homecoming the first one of those 3?
Yeah, it's the first one of the Tom Holland trilogy.
Isn't that the one where he cuts the boat in half and then he pulls it with webs?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Which is on another card.
Are you talking about the scene where he doesn't have his like costume yet?
He has lost the costume.
Right. Oh, that's right. He lost it. Yes.
Or
he's wearing like a hoodie or something.
Yeah, like the like closet Spider-Man costume.
Closet Spider-Man.
Budget costume.
Okay. I think the art that's usually where we start. So let's just talk about the art. I think the art is fantastic. I think it's amazing. It's a classic Spider-Man red and blue suit with the web pattern. Mm-hmm. Crucially, it has like the webs under his arms.
Yes.
Which not every incarnation of the suit has, but it's classic, and I happen to really like it.
I think this artist is known for doing that, actually.
I don't know who the artist is, but I do know what comic it's from.
Oh, man. Give me a second. I'll find it.
Oh, it's from Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 500 from 2003.
Give me a minute. I'll find it. Let's keep going.
So many comics.
Amerikano is furiously researching what it came from. I think the art is great. It's Spider-Man all the way. He like looks buff and lithe, and he's like pushing this whatever it is, and the water is like falling on him. He looks cool.
John Romita Jr.
I think it looks awesome.
I like this one a lot.
John Romita Jr. If you're listening, and I know you are, John Romita Jr., winninghandpodcast@gmail. Come on, we'll talk about it.
He's known. I think his dad also, John Romita Sr., was an artist for Marvel and did a lot of Spider-Man.
Well, they can both come on the podcast. Let's go. Come on, guys.
But I think John Romita Jr. It has the webbing under between his arms, his biceps, and his
side, his ribs.
Yeah,
I will say I hate that about the Spider-Man suit.
Really?
Do you?
I really
Isn't that
hate
like
it.
OG Spider-Man from like way back when he
so.
first came out had that?
I believe
So
that's
cool.
true.
I love it.
I've always hated it.
Okay.
I think in this, it's one of those things. I do like the art. It's really cool because when I think of Spider-Man, I don't think of strength. I think of dexterity and agility more before I think of strength, right?
Yeah.
That being said, there's a fist requirement, and he's holding up a freaking building.
Yeah.
It's
He's strong.
it's pretty awesome, right?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
I say a building. I don't remember specifically when I read this. I don't know if it's a building or like part of a building, a beam or
Something
whatever.
heavy.
Yeah.
Okay, so quick aside here. Do we have a favorite Spider-Man suit?
Ooh.
Do you guys have a favorite?
Like from comics?
Yeah, or MCU. I don't care. If Spider-Man has worn it, it is eligible. So if you want to talk about the one that Tobey Maguire wore when he fought Buzzsaw in the ring that he made at home, we can use it. It's eligible.
I mean, I like the classic red and blue. Spider-Man my son and I have read a lot of Spider-Man comics because that's his favorite hero. I think it's kind of fun what they did in is it No Way Home MCU movie?
Yep.
Where he's not actually, I mean, he's like in Europe.
Yeah.
Right. I think he goes by Spider Monkey or something stupid.
I forgot about
I don't know. Does he?
But he's wearing like all black, and it's like a ski mask and like black goggles.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cool because
Far From Home. That was Far From Home.
Far From Home. That's right.
From home. That's right.
And I mean, that's not my favorite. I like the classic look, but I think that was pretty cool because he was trying to pretend like Spider-Man wasn't in Europe,
Yeah.
but like everyone knew it was Spider-Man.
Of course.
Like, just because you have a black suit, like from the dollar store, doesn't mean that we don't know who you are.
Tom Holland Peter Parker is so good. I love him. He's fantastic.
Toby will always be my Peter Parker, but Tom is not bad.
I have a soft spot for Andrew Garfield too. But
Okay. What's your favorite suit, Leethus?
probably the Amazing Spider-Man 1
Oh, in
Andrew
the movie.
Garfield suit. I really like that one.
I'm going to go a little cheating here, and I'm going to say the Scarlet Spider, the Ben Reilly from the 90s with like the maroon and the blue hoodie that he ripped. I'm a 90s kid, so that hits home.
Well, the first comic I ever bought was actually because I saw Spider-Man on the cover, and it was him in like the Iron Spider suit, and I was like, "What is that?"
Those are cool.
Still have it.
So many good suits. All right, let's get this train back on track. So we talked about the art. The art we universally said is awesome. We need to talk about the theme and the power and the fun. So, Leethus, you have some thoughts that I think you wanted to get to here about the requirement keyword. So, why don't you start there?
That's not theme, power, or fun. I mean, it kind of is, as Amerikano alluded to. This card has the requirement of spending a physical resource in order to play it. So it's a 2-cost card, and most of the time when you play a card, you just spend whatever resources you want. This one, at least one of those resources has to be physical. This came out in the Sinister Motives box, and
it can
Sinister
be wild.
Motives,
just interject.
Yeah. Like, it's complicated, actually, but yes. So Sinister Motives was the first instance of these cards with requirements on them. And like Amerikano said, this does feed into the theme pretty well. It's a display of strength that he's doing there, and so it requires a physical strength icon to play it. Yeah, that was new for this card.
There are a few other requirement cards which we can go into if you want. They all have different requirements. I don't know if we need to get into that. How hard is the requirement to hit? Because I did just mention it can be wild.
So this is one of the things that I like about this game. I was hoping that they were going to do something like this when they did, because how do I want to say this? It kind of requires you to be thoughtful in how you put the deck together and not just put like, hey, I'm going to throw these strong protection cards in there, because you want to be able to have access or more viable access to this card if you're putting it in your deck. I like the effect of the card, but because there's a requirement, it makes you think. I think it makes you think a little bit more when you're putting your deck together. And think about the actual resources on the cards, not just the effects of the cards.
I agree, and I think one of the interesting things about that is that this is a protection card and it uses the fist resource, but protection is more closely known for the lightning resource. A lot of cards use that, and a lot of cards have that. I think it's interesting that for the requirement cards they have, they've chosen often a type of resource that isn't that common, so you do have to think about it. Like the fist resource is most commonly found, I think, in aggression. A lot of ton of fists there. Unless I'm wrong, Leethus.
It kind of depends on what you're going for. Like certain protection builds have a lot more energy. Certain builds have a lot more physical. Like if you're building a heavy event deck in protection, you probably have a lot of physical. Things like counterpunch, hard knocks are physical resources. But a lot of the cheap cards and upgrades are energy, electrostatic armor.
But also a lot of the... So, not to interject, but each of them has a resource generator, right? Sense of Justice
yes.
and Martial Prowess and what's the one in protection?
Nerves of Steel.
Nerves of Steel. And they generate lightning, and for the example here, and that's used in Jump Flip and Sidestep and a bunch of other cards like that. So it's the lightning is more commonly, I think, associated because of that resource generator, same way that Sense of Justice generates a mental resource, and there's a lot of mental stuff that happens in Justice. That's kind of what I was getting at.
You're inclined to put that resource type into the deck to get those benefits. So having a card like this that
goes against that kind of,
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And so generally the requirement thing, how do you guys feel about it? Amerikano, you mentioned you like it.
I like it for the deck building aspect. I think it's going to be less as the card pool continues to expand, you're going to have more access to a more variety of card effects with specific types, but I still think it requires you to be fairly thoughtful in the choices you make. Now that being said, you can always throw in get some wilds in their Quinn Carrier or something, right? So you can guarantee that you can get this off, which I don't think is a problem, but I think RNG plays a big role in a card game. If you don't see Quinn Carrier, you still need physical resources in your hand, a physical resource in your hand to get this off. So, and I think it's important to note too that a card that I would say is adjacent to this that doesn't require a physical resource is Momentum Shift, where you heal 2 damage and then deal 2 damage. It's not the same thing because this I think is more versatile in that you ready your hero, you can flip to Alter Ego and recover, getting more. You can thwart, depending on what your stats are and the type of build you've put together. But there you don't have a requirement. So I think that it makes sense mechanically to have a requirement for a card that allows versatility like this.
This card also came in the precon for Ghost Spider, and Ghost Spider has a card in her hero kit with a requirement, but it's mental. And so she has this, she's sort of got this tension of needing multiple different resource types, not for a given card, but throughout her deck. And sometimes in those situations where you're going to have one card left over in your hand at the end of the turn, you're trying to decide which one to hold on to. That starts to influence those sorts of decisions too. Like, which one do you hold on to based on what card you think you're going to draw next turn?
Yeah, I mean, I would be open to seeing this expand more, and I think, like Amerikano said, it does help make the card not too powerful, right? Is it thematic? I think it's thematic. Ready Strength. It's a fist resource. It requires a fist resource. I can see the theme there.
So yes, in the cost, I don't know that the effect necessarily is, and maybe I can be persuaded otherwise. I mean, I was thinking about this. Heal 2 damage from your hero. The name of the card is What Doesn't Kill Me. You're healing 2 damage from your hero, then you're readying your hero. I mean, I know that it's not What Doesn't Kill Me only makes me stronger. I know that it's What Doesn't Kill Me. I mean, I get the healing. That part kind of makes sense. I don't know. I'm torn on the actual effect of the card with the name and the art kind of together, but I think the requirement is the most thematic thing about this card, honestly. Which sounds weird to say when I'm saying it out loud.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the name of the card and what it does doesn't feel super thematic to me. The whole like what doesn't kill me makes me stronger bit. That makes me feel more like, what's the card called? Battle Fury, that like
You're gonna
readies
gain
you
an
after
attack.
you take damage or something.
Right.
That makes me feel more like that. This one is like, it's about resilience, right? You're healing and you're readying and you're back for more.
Well, I think there's a thematic match here once we start talking about the healing as a cost for playing the card. I think that's an important aspect of it. So, again, the hero action on this card says heal 2 damage from your hero, arrow, ready your hero. So you cannot play this card unless you can pay all of the costs, which includes the healing 2 damage. If you're at full HP, you can't play this card. So the decks that tend to make use of this card, like heavy use of this card, are expecting to take some amount of damage. You're not playing a build where you're going to be defending every turn for as much as you possibly can. You're playing this card if you're expecting to get hit, and this is your way of bouncing back from that and retaliating.
That's a really strong point, and I would say my favorite Wolverine build is protection. And I think this is kind of a no-brainer for a Wolverine protection deck.
For Wolverine, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it is. But crucially, because the way the arrow effect works, you do have to resolve both sides of the arrow, or be able to, in order to play the card. That's official from FFG.
Yeah, that really makes sense. Just I'm trying to break that apart a little bit more.
You're the rules guy.
If you're resolving, in order to initiate an effect, the resolved ability has to have some sort of impact on the game state.
Yes.
So if you have, like, 4 Justice removes 3 or 4 threat, you can play it on a card or on a side scheme that only has 1 threat remaining.
Because it changes.
You just do as much as you can.
Right. The tricky part about this one, the result or the effect is ready your hero. There's no partially readying your hero.
Exactly.
That's the difference between those two examples, right?
Right. So might be other cards where there's these sort of like partial scenarios, and that's what I wanted to highlight. But yeah, in this case, like Amerikano said, there's no partial exhaust or ready. Like, you just are or not. It's binary.
Luckily, that's easy enough, right? You can just use a basic ability before you play this card. That's easy.
Right.
I do want to make one point going back to the requirement. Even if you have something that can reduce the cost of cards to 0, you still must play a physical resource to play this card.
Good point.
Which I think, again, it goes back to my point of, I think that's the most thematic part about this card, because he's freaking holding up a building, and it does require some amount of strength to do what you want to do with this card, because it kind of heralds back to Captain America's "I can do this all day," where he can ready himself once per turn, where it evokes this image of him getting back up, right? The same kind of deal with this card is, you have to have some sort of strength to pick yourself back up when you're down or when you're exhausted. So you have to spend that strength resource, regardless of any discounts you get.
This is such a Spider-Man card. I love it.
But you can use the power of protection to pay for this card, right? Because it generates 2 wild or 2 green wild or whatever.
The requirement does not say, this is the rules according to Amerikano. The requirement does not say printed physical resource, so you should be able to play using a wild resource.
Yeah, you can. So you generate wild resources, but then you can spend them as whatever type of resource you want. So you can just determine that one of the resources generated is spent as physical.
Yeah.
To meet the requirement for the card.
So power protection pays for this card by itself.
It's really strong.
Or Venom. Venom can pay for this with damaging himself, which might help you hit the trigger.
The 2.
Yeah. But you have to be able to heal 2. So if you're at full health, damaging yourself for 1 doesn't help you there. So moving on. We've talked about a bunch of different stuff. Let's just touch on quick how fun this card is, and then we'll hit the final ratings. So, Amerikano, how fun is this card?
Yeah, I think this card is really fun, because this is the kind of protection deck that I often find myself going to, where you're you're okay with taking some punches, but it's going to allow you to trigger different things. So with Nova or with Wolverine or whatever, right? Where, hey, I'm going to take some damage, but I'm going to get to do all these things. And I think for me, one of the most fun parts of the game is exhausting my hero and then readying my hero and exhausting my hero and readying my hero, because like I just said, it evokes that sense of like determinedness or whatever you want to say with a hero. Like I'm not giving up. So that goes to fun, that goes to theme. Very fun card.
I agree that readying is like one of the most satisfying things you can do with your hero. I don't know why.
It's not necessarily the strongest, right?
No.
It just seems fun.
Yeah, you're like, I'm just going to attack for 2, but like I'm going to ready and do it again. I don't know. It feels cool.
I will say, if you have a hero with a base stat of 3, a thwart or attack, I think this card increases in value even more than like a base of 2. Because like the example I get with Momentum Shift, that's limiting to just 2 damage to the villain or to an opponent. I don't remember. But with 3, now you're increasing the value of your base with your base stat of 3 anyway. And that's now min-maxing and doing all that.
Well, then some heroes even more, right? Like, for example, Quicksilver. Quick, before you jump in, Leethus, like, Quicksilver loves this because every time he readies himself, he's going to ready his friction resistance also. So you just like getting extra bonuses. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I would say this card feeds into like the kind of power fantasy of characters like Drax and Hulk. Like they love this card so much. They have these giant HP pools that just get worn down, and this gives them a way to replenish that while staying in hero form and punching things in the face more, which is all you want to do as those heroes.
Because Drax can hit for a ton.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really good combos there. Like it enables Hulk to do his what's the card called? The one where he overkills for a whole bunch.
Oh, it's
I don't know why I can't remember it right now.
I don't know what it's called.
And you're not starved for physical resources in that deck.
Yeah, like it fits perfectly. Like Drax gets to draw more cards off Leethus Mastery, so he wants to do this anyway, and he wants to take those attacks. And so this being the card that sits on the other side that keeps him going feels, I think it's a blast to play for a lot of characters, but particularly for them.
Also, I looked it up. It's called Hulk Smash. It's like the most obvious card name.
Oh my god, I'm so ashamed of myself.
Couldn't think of it.
I quit. I'm done.
All right, so then let's move into final ratings. Amerikano, I'm going to let you go last because you kind of brought this card and you're the guest. And Leethus, do you want to go first or second?
I'll go first since you gave me the opportunity.
Go.
I'm going to give this card a 9 out of 10. I think this card's awesome. I like the art on it a lot. I like the effect of it. I think the theme is cool. I like Requirement. I feel like this was a card that sort of filled a gap that we had in protection when it came out. It's great. The only thing that would have bumped it up to this 10 is if I like the actual art style a little bit more. But that feels quibbling. Maybe I should have just given it a 10, but it's too late now.
That's all right. It's part of the game. It's part of the card.
Too late. I'm also going to give it a 9 out of 10. I think this card's awesome. I love the art. I love protection, so it sees a lot of play. And the readying protection archetype has a bunch of different uses, from Ever Vigilant to Repurpose to Leading Blow to this one. There's a lot of different ways to ready, and that's fun, as we just talked about, readying yourself. And, it avoids flipping down, which often protection decks don't want to flip, especially if you're doing any kind of defending. You don't want to flip down to heal because all those defense cards you may have in your hand are now useless. But yeah, this is great. I think 9 out of 10. I'm a little stingy with my 10s, so I won't go there, but I think it's really good. Amerikano, what do you think?
Man, you guys gave this card really high expectations. I think it's a really, really, really good card. I don't think it's a great card. So I think it's like almost there. I give it an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
And I think, Leethus, you might agree with me. I think the cropping of this card knocks it down one. I want to see what Spider-Man's doing. I want you to see that he's I mean, I know I get it. It focuses on his rippling abs and all this kind of stuff. But
dude's been hitting the gym,
But like, what is he even holding? Like, is that a mattress? No, I know it's not a mattress. But like, if it's a mattress, that's no good. You can't tell what it is. So that is a quibble thing. But I think that because I don't necessarily think that it's friendly for newer players to the game if you're not familiar with deck building in card games. I think it can be tricky to build a deck effectively enough to make this like an almost automatic being able to play it. With only 3 types of resources in the game, I don't think it's horrible. Right? I actually like the requirement aspect of this card. I'm just saying if you're a newer player and you're not conscientious about how you build your deck with this card in there, it may become tricky to play. You might have a handful of energy resources and this, and you're like, well, I really need the healing, and so I think that knocks it down a little bit in that it's not the easiest to include. I'm not saying it's difficult, but it's not the easiest to like just include in the deck, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think it does.
I mean, for me, I love that aspect. I love that it makes you think, but I'm just saying, and I don't think that all cards should be like auto include.
No, I don't like auto include cards.
Yeah. So, but I mean, 8 is a really good score. I think it's a really, really, really good card. No,
it's a really good card. I quite like it as well. I guess I disagree with you guys on the art. I quite like it. I imagine him holding up the crushing weight of his debts and relationship problems.
I like the image, like what it is. I just don't like the art style all that much. Like
the webs and the underarms.
Quibbling. Yeah, I don't like the.
I just want it zoomed out a little bit. That's all I want.
Yeah, then it'd be too small.
Yeah, you're probably right.
It's only half of a card, right? It's not a lot of art. Okay, well, I think so. Overall, we were pretty positive in this card. 9, 9, and 8 is good. If you listened this far, dear listeners, all 4 of you that are still here, please rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. It takes just a minute, and it does help us quite a bit. Thank you to Amerikano for coming out of semi-podcast retirement and joining us on the podcast and talking about the game. You are always welcome back, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. It's good to deep dive into the game occasionally. So
yeah, but not quite as often without the pressure.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I hope you come back. It was a good time. And thanks to Leethus for being here with some crazy takes, as always. We had a good time. And listeners, winninghandpodcast@gmail.com if you want to say anything to us about any of us or about the episode. We'd love to hear from you. Other than that, thanks, and we'll say goodbye, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Adios.